So good morning, everyone. This is Manhal. Let's begin on the session. So we will be discussing a bit about ESG in the Middle East and how it's landscaping all across ESG, all across GCC. So today we'll be we'll be giving introduction about ourselves, what the Middle East ESG trends have been, how frameworks have been going on, COP28, shaping the global climate change, specifically ESG developments in the UAE, investment impact, implication and ESG financing, and companies embracing the UAE ESG in the UAE specifically. And a bit of a question and Q&A sessions with the panelist, and along with closing remarks, we'll end the session. So I'll give a brief introduction about myself. I'm an ACCA fellow member, along with I'm a CFA charter holder. I've been in the industry for about more than a decade. With me is Sakim Nisar, who is managing partner at athGADLANG. Ashley Dennis, she's an ESG manager at Innova Beyond, and Edmund Overa, who is the regional managing partner at Optimize International. So let's discuss what ESG, Middle Eastern ESG trends and frameworks have been. So in UAE 2022, Securities and Commodities Exchange made a mandatory sustainability reporting for about 130 companies, for listed companies specifically. The guidelines for those have been issued by ADX, Abu Dhabi Exchange, and Dubai Financial Markets. Those guidelines provide you how to report those information, or you may go to GRI and follow those and report your sustainability reporting. UAE recently has launched a region-first independent climate change accredited accelerator as a vehicle to drive commitment towards its net zero emissions by 2050. In Saudi Arabia, we have recently seen in 2021 that Tadawul introduced sustainability disclosures reporting guidelines to promote ESG reporting, which in 2030 includes commitments to reduce emissions, improve access to renewable energy, and implemented circular economy. Whereas in Qatar issued its stock exchange ESG reporting guidelines in 2022. Qatar Financial Markets also made requiring climate risk reporting under governance code aligned with TCFD. So Bahrain has taken the first initiative of making it mandatory. Central Bank of Bahrain recently, in November 2023, has made it mandatory for all the regulated entities to issue their ESG report by the end of 2024. And the first ESG report for all listed companies, banks, insurance, and other regulated entities would have to issue their ESG report by the end of 2024. And the first report will be published in March 2025. The report can be published with along with your annual report, or the companies have a liberty to issue a separate report calling ESG reporting. Oman also followed the same trend, and they also have issued a mandatory reporting requirement for the companies in December 2024. The companies would have to, at the end of December 2024, the companies would have to report this ESG report. COP28 just recently concluded in UAE, and the Scientist-Based Targets Initiative (SBTI) has launched bold actions at COP28. 400 large organizations spanning across investors and institutional, pledging to support roughly from 64 different countries. Launch of the net zero financial policies. Leading ESG bodies like PRI, UNE, UNCTAD, and IFRS collaboratively launched this task force at COP28. Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive were in the EU sustainability reporting legislation applicable from 2024. It mandated large listed companies and European companies provide comprehensive disclosures. These disclosures must follow the detailed European sustainability reporting standards. disclosures standard for small and medium-sized enterprises. At COP28, the UAE announced a plan to develop and sustainability disclosures for SMEs as well. This will help SMEs to provide consistent decision useful sustainability data to their stakeholders. So what has happened in the UAE specifically towards ESG? So ESG momentum took a good space in the last couple of years. Recently, it has been noted that ESG formal strategies have been created for about 64% of the companies registered in the UAE, specifically towards those companies who are listed and have more public exposure compared to the private limited companies. Significant strong integration into ESG business model driven by regulatory requirements and stakeholder expectation. Hosting COP28 was again a game changer, which put a spotlight on the UAE when it comes to regulatory framework. Mandatory ESG reporting for listed companies, which has been aligned with GRI, is again a big momentum, big step. Enhancing transparency and accountability in ESG disclosures has already been part of it's been a DNA of UAE ESG frameworks. Sustainability related disclosures principle by SFWG in 2023, guided by high quality ESG reporting and disclosures, covers aspects like materiality, verification, and assurance. Sustainability finance has been a targeting point. About $600 billion dirhams have been invested in renewable energy projects, demonstrating a significant financial commitments to clean energy, driving innovations and developments of renewable energy infrastructure. Dubai green funds like MENA funds, first specialized green investment funds have been created just to focus towards creating a renewable and green funding projects, facilitating finance opportunities for clean and energy initiatives. When it comes to transformative projects, Mohammed bin Rashid Maktoum solar project, world's largest single site power project in solar. Barak's nuclear energy plant carbon footprint of reduction will be too big, as it would be diversifying the energy mix with clean nuclear energy, reducing reliance on fossil fuel and mitigating environmental impact. Following on to investment implications and ESG financing. So, how a report by Climate Bond Initiative concluded that 65% of green bonds are allocated to investors on describing themselves as holding green or responsible investments mandates. Green bonds significantly oversubscribed by 3.1% for euros and 3.8% for USD compared to vanilla bonds. Younger generation prioritize green and social considerations over financial returns. Access to financial capital, ESG performance, impact, access to capital and financing options. Investors, lenders consider ESG factors affecting cost of capital and financing terms rather than the traditional methods. ESG focused investment products, green bonds, proceeds used for eligible green projects like clean energy, renewable energy, are have been in a hot cake, and they have taken a huge change in the market. Things have been changing on a very rapid pace. Financial impact on performance, ESG integral and financial performances, long-term sustainability and risk management have been seen on the basis of made investments on these fronts. Strong ESG practices provide competitive advantage, attractive investments, and stakeholders' trust. Adhering to ESG principles drive cost and savings efficiency gains, inclusive energy efficiency operations, and sustainability supply chains. Along with that, if we look at the benefits of it, employee retentions and customer Customer retention has also been a big part of this. We have seen that there have been many companies who have made big commitments, made quite significant change in their organization. But we have highlighted these two companies, SABIC and Emirates Waste of Energy. SABIC's vision is to revolve and establish a circular carbon economy where all value chains are interconnected and cyclical. This encompasses product design, development, and our industrial processes, including capturing carbon containing gases and utilizing them as valuable feedstock inputs. To realize this carbon system, they are advancing strategies of innovating solutions like reducing, reuse, recycle, and remove. They are targeting to reduce 4 gigawatts of renewable energy by 2025 and 12 gigawatts by 2030. They're planning to capturing gas that were otherwise by emitted and incorporating them into solid or liquid carbon products. One of them, joint ventures, became Middle East first to produce certified circular menthol from captured and purified CO2. Recycling, advancing for increased global plastic recycling. They are scaling up true cycle solutions to accelerate a solution plastic economy, including advanced recycling and reduced plastic incineration and environmental leakage. Remove CO2 already present in the atmosphere. One of their affiliate in Saudi Arabia has built and operate the world's largest carbon capture and purification system. When it comes to Emirates Waste to Energy, the Emirates Waste to Energy is a pioneer energy joint venture formed in 2017 between Biha Group and Masdar for waste to energy innovations in the UAE. It combines Biha's energy expertise and in waste management solutions with Masdar's leadership in clean. Their inaugural project, the Sharjah Waste to Energy, is a significant step towards enabling Sharjah to progress towards 100% landfill waste division and diversion while simultaneously powering the grid enough energy to supply 28,000 homes. By combining their respective strengths, this joint venture represents a major advancement in sustainable waste and renewable energy production for the region. We'll now move to the questions. So, Saqib Saab, if you would, how can companies ensure effective board oversight and accountability when it comes to ESG policies and performances? What's your take on that?
Thank you, Manal. Thank you. So, good afternoon, good morning. My name is Saqib Nisar. I'm a managing partner with athGADLANG. So the question here is, how can companies ensure effective board oversight and accountability when it comes to ESG policy and performance? I think the participants here, I think they all understand what ESG is. And I think we've been talking about ESG for the past maybe a couple of years now in terms of what it really means for the organization, whether it is a cost or an investment. And I think what we've seen in the recent past is more and more companies, stakeholders are realizing that it's effectively an investment. Yes, it does cost money to comply with the requirements. And I think more and more board members in particular, or board of directors, are taking this initiative seriously. As Manal mentioned earlier, there are countries who made it mandatory. Bahrain is a prime example. In other countries, voluntary, but I won't be surprised in the next couple of years, you will see more mandatory regulations coming up in terms of complying, because there is a push from EU, less so from US and China, but more from EU in terms of how the organizations or corporates manage their environmental impact. So as we all know, board is overall responsible for ensuring compliance with ESG. So what do board need to do? I will list down a few areas where I believe the board of directors should actively embed the ESG agenda in their strategy. So what do they need to do? The first is they need to establish clear ESG governance structure. What does that mean? You need to set up an ESG committee, okay, within the board. Okay, so within the board, there are executives or board members who are primarily responsible for the ESG agenda. Okay, it's a new area when it comes to, for example, governance. I mean, board of directors have dealt with governance in the past. There are regulatory requirements. So governance piece within ESG is not something new. What I see challenging is more on the environmental side, because that is less discussed in the past. So environmental and to some extent social as well, right? So they need to assign an ESG committee. They need to then train those individuals. Okay, in terms of the board committee member, they need to understand what their objective is. Should be clearly defined roles and responsibilities in terms of what this ESG committee would do. Just like, you have terms of references of audit committee, other committees which are set up. Similarly, you need to have a terms of reference of terms or roles and responsibility clearly defined in terms of what the committee is established and what is their objective. Then we'll talk about the board composition. Okay, so you'll have a standard board. Within that board, I've seen in an organization you will have an individual who's assigned the kind of ESG responsibility, but I've also seen another board of directors where they have actually taken one resource either from finance or compliance to be part of the board of directors to talk about ESG agenda. Okay, so those are people with the ESG expertise who are also educating the existing board of directors. What else do they need to do? They also need to bring ESG in their corporate strategy. Okay, so you will have a corporate strategy where you talk about performance, new acquisitions, divestments. You need to start talking about how we are going to be bringing or how we're going to measure the impact of environmental, social, and governance impact on the climate, and how is the company impacting climate as a whole, and how they are aligned with the country's specific targets. Okay, so I think as Minal gave you some examples of two organizations, and we have been monitoring these two organizations in terms of maturity level, and I think they are right up there. SABIC is there, and you've got all the other PIF entities in Saudi Arabia. You've got ADNOC, for example, here in UAE, which are making significant impact in terms of taking the lead in terms of complying with the ESG agenda. So what do they need to? So they need to have it as a corporate strategy. Then I think they will need to have ESG goals. What does that mean? And again, it's not about just flopping and maybe just giving a very high level 50,000 feet goals. You need to have clear, measurable ESG goals that align with the overall strategy. And again, I always advise our clients, these are baby steps, right? So you can't go from 0 to 100 on day one. You need to take baby steps, and I think that's also the regulators do understand that. For example, in Bahrain, when they issued the guidelines for financial institutions, they did say that we expect this. We don't expect the companies to comply fully with the regulations. They are kind of receptive, and they say that these kind of maturity would take time, and they will, effectively, the companies will not be penalized if they're not 100% compliant with the regulations. And then another area which I think is important, which again comes from the top, is your regular reporting and transparency. Okay, so again, if you look at some of the ESG reports issued in the recent past, whether it's in Saudi or UAE, what we've seen is board of the companies are, kind of being transparent. At least what I've seen is what they have not achieved or what they intend to achieve, right? So whether it's from governance perspective, social perspective, environmental, if they're having a detrimental impact from environmental perspective, they're also saying, yes, we have an issue, but this is our kind of 5-year strategy in terms of what we're going to do going forward to reduce the carbon footprint. Then you need to have risk management and compliance. What does that mean? You regularly assess your ESG related risks. Okay, so just like other areas where you have AML, you have other risks which impact the organization, you also have ESG related risks. How do you identify those risks, and then you need to incorporate those risks in your overall risk management framework. Okay, so that is important, and then you of course need to monitor this on a regular basis. Again, the challenge is you will have a risk management team, you have an internal audit team. Do they have the know-how in terms of how to identify ESG related risks? Again, here we are advising our clients to train their existing resources, or maybe hire resources with the ESG expertise. Another area which I think is very important is stakeholder engagement. Now, stakeholder engagement says you should have a clear strategy for engaging with your key stakeholders. So who could be your stakeholders? Your shareholders, right? The regulators, your investors, your customers, your suppliers, right? So all of these are your stakeholders. You need to then decide in terms of what their strategy is. We've seen in Europe, for example, when you have investors who are investing in other countries or other companies, they are, in addition to conducting financial due diligence, we've actually seen companies conducting ESG due diligence. Okay, so in terms of if we're acquiring this company, financial due diligence, everything is fine, but from ESG perspective, is this the right company to invest in? And I think this is an area which will gather more ground in the coming months or years, where companies or investors will start asking these questions. So when investors start asking these questions, the companies, even if there is not a mandatory requirement, I can see companies taking ESG very seriously. And I've obviously seen having discussions with some of the board members where they have international investors where they've started asking these questions, and they're receiving questionnaires in terms of, what strategy you have from ESG perspective. Okay, and then another area which needs to happen is the board accountability and evaluation. So when you have assigned responsibility of the ESG committee, then you need to conduct regular evaluation of your board's performance from ESG perspective. Okay. And then finally, I think I would say is encourage a culture of ESG responsibility. Okay, so that again is tone from the top. You have corporate governance, you have code of conduct, you have code of ethics, you have other policies like anti-bribery and corruption policies, right, and conflict of interest policies. Similarly, from ESG perspective, you need to educate your own staff, your team members in terms of, yes, ESG is here to stay, and we are going to be taking it seriously. So, in terms of regular messages from the board or from the executive management in terms of how, the management is taking it seriously. So to summarize, what I suggest is you need to kind of establish a framework for implementation. So what you need to do is you need to have formation, you need to form a ESG committee. You need to educate your board, which means training. You need to set up and monitor your ESG goals. You need to have enhanced reporting and transparency in terms of how you report. Regular risk assessments, as I mentioned, stakeholder engagement initiatives, and finally, performance review and accountability. So those are the kind of 8-9 areas which I think the board needs to kind of implement. And again, as I said, this is not something which is theoretical. I have actually seen in larger organization and to some extent in smaller organization in UAE, in Saudi Arabia in particular, where we're having these discussions with board members. They're taking it seriously. Some are saying, let the regulation come, then we will implement it. Others are saying, let's start doing an assessment, especially companies with exposure to international markets. They're taking it much more seriously because they know that this is coming. The pressure has started coming from international investors or international stakeholders, and I see a marked kind of change in the next 12 months or so. So that's my answer, Minal. So I think over to you.
Thank you, Sagar. Thank you for all your points. Let's move on to the next question. Ed, would you tell us what role can industry associations, NGOs, and the organizations play in promoting and supporting ESG initiatives in the region?
I'm going to take this one. Good morning. Good morning.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good morning.
So I think that the role to this kind of organizations play is very important because, as you know, we have an agenda, 2030 agenda, approved by United Nations, where we have to accomplish with 17 Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, and 169 targets. And an NGO and similar organization, as an actors important in the planet, together with governance in companies, in terms to accomplish these SDGs. And I think that for that, the activities that NGOs have to do, I can summary in 3 fields or in 3 actions: sensitization, take action, and communication. I mean sensitization because these kind of entities, NGOs, I mean, have to talk with the public authorities to align their policies with the 2030 agenda. For example, in Latin America region, forests occupy 46% of the total area, almost 50%. But in the last 30 years, 96 million hectares have been deforested. And the main causes of this deforestation is for the industrialization of the livestock and agriculture, mainly in Brazil, Bolivia, Argentina, and Paraguay. So the solution in this problem starts with the action or the sensitization of the NGOs, sorry, because NGOs acted to sensitize the government, and they can achieve that the government and the parliament change or put harder the anti-deforestation laws. This is an example and how NGO have to act in terms of sensitization. The other action, the other field that NGOs have to consider, have to involve, is take action. For example, carry out projects and programs, develop projects like orphan care centers for teenagers matters, or educational projects, for example, like rural schools and other similars. And finally, communication is important. Transfer to all the society, to all the citizens, the 2023 agenda. This is important for to achieving the objective. For example, incorporate these measures in the campaigns, in the different projects, in events, bring the message of this agenda to all national and international events, create a strategic also alliances with another actors and others. I think a summary, as I told you, that NGOs have to involve sensitization, take action, and communication.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you very much. Let's move on to the next question. Ashley, could you enlighten us with what role can technology play in facilitating better ESG data management, analysis, and reporting?
Of course. First of all, hello, everyone. Good morning or good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Thank you very much for the question and also the introduction. Minhal, as Minhal said, I am an ESG manager and I'm also a lawyer, and basically I'm working with companies and I'm accompanying them throughout their ESG journeys, the entire ESG journey, going back to the question, what role can technology play in facilitating better ESG data management, analysis, and reporting? We can say that technology is a game changer, right? Especially when it comes to elevating the ESG data management, analysis, and reporting to the new heights of accuracy, efficiency, and insight. Imagine having a powerful digital command center that consolidates all your ESG data streams into one seamless platform. There are these platforms right now that we can, like companies, big companies especially, should learn how to leverage, because now we are strongly recommending companies to move away from managing ESG related data on offline platforms, offline tools, or Excel sheets, getting lost in and wasting losing a lot of time in emailing their colleagues, emailing between different departments, but approaching towards these solutions where they can save a lot of time and eliminate a lot of risks, such as data errors, such as a lot of inefficient outcomes. So technology here plays a critical role in enhancing the ESG data management, analysis, reporting, and particularly through the use of softwares as a service like SaaS. And these platforms offer a comprehensive and integrated approach to managing the ESG data. Let me briefly touch upon some of the benefits of using such solutions. First of all, we can talk about a streamlined data collection. These platforms facilitate the collection of ESG data from multiple sources in a unified manner. This simplifies process of gathering data from various departments and stakeholders, ensuring that all relevant information is captured accurately and efficiently, and they are aggregated in a way that doesn't leave any room for data errors. Then we can talk about enhanced data management. With a centralized platform, you can manage your ESG data much more effectively. You can set goals, you can set budget objectives, you can link the objectives to these goals and track performance metrics. You can manage your material issues. Once you identify your material issues, you can create KPIs. You can benefit from KPIs that are identified in some of the most widely used frameworks, such as GRI, SASB, or some regulatory frameworks, regulations, laws, etc. We can also talk about the fact that these platforms allow for real-time monitoring and updates, which helps also maintaining the accuracy and relevance of the data. If you are using a robust ESG management platform, and if you're collecting data according to, let's say, GRI, because it is the most widely known ESG reporting framework, you can easily get automatic updates if there's a new if there's a development, if there's an update coming from GRI directly, without you or your team having to always keep an eye on the developments of the standards in the standard that you are using or the regulatory landscape. We can also, like I said, but I want to pronounce again, that getting lost in Excel sheets and trying to identify the single source of data error is something companies should start moving away from at a very fast pace. Then I would like to talk about the automated reporting. If you're using a SaaS platform, you can automate the generation of ESG reports according to various ESG reporting and ESG data collection standards. Once you collect the KPIs across your organizational units, these platforms allow you to aggregate the data and automate the ESG reporting. You can do it based on, like you can report your ESG related information at a group level or at the smaller individual units, but you can aggregate the data and use it for the group level information, group level disclosures. We can also talk about increased transparency and traceability, which is something very important, especially when we talk about a regulatory landscape that is mandating the external assurance in the reports. Because before, the reportings in general were based on a voluntary standard, but now we are seeing, and we can talk about it later as well, we are seeing more and more regulations mandating ESG reporting and mandating these reports to be assured externally by an independent auditor. Once we talk about an independent auditor, it is very important to trace the data source, right? And a robust ESG platform provides you the full traceability of data, which enhances the transparency. This is also crucial for building trust with your stakeholders, as they can see the sources and integrity of the reported data. For example, in a project, we are working with SGO data collection and sustainability reporting platform, where we have a workflow. The workflow has introduces 3 actors in the platform. The first one is contributor who feeds the platform with data. The second one is the approver. So once the contributor finishes editing the data, the data is sent to the approver, and the approver can either approve the data and reject the data. Once one of these 2 actions are taken, the contributor is automatically informed via email, so you don't have to send emails anymore. And if the data is rejected with the reason of this rejection, then the contributor directly correct the data, revise it as needed. And the second role in the platform in this workflow is the reader. Who is the reader? Reader is the auditor who can only go to the SAS without having to receive pages of report or Excels, but auditors can use the same platforms in order to only read the data without being able to change or modify the data, but also being able to trace back to the contributor that I was just saying. Moving to the next benefit, we can say that also the companies can have an improved decision-making process by leveraging these advanced analytics. They can gain insights into their ESG performance. I was talking about establishing some goals and budget-related objectives and linking these 2 together, and getting these insights help companies in identifying trends, risks, and opportunities, enabling them better strategic decision-making to drive their sustainability initiatives. Also, like before, we were talking about, Saqib was talking about the role of the board of directors and the like governing bodies in a company. So also these data, these enhanced advanced analytics can help companies to pitch the sustainability initiatives to their board of directors. Finally, to summarize, I can say that utilizing these technological advancements, companies can transform their ESG reporting from a box-ticking exercise, be it for a compliance objective or another reason, into a strategic advantage, positioning themselves as a leader in sustainability and gaining a competitive edge in the market.
Thank you, Ashley. Thank you very much. Let's move on to the next question. So, Ed, would you tell me how can companies ensure that ESG efforts are authentic and not just greenwashing or box ticking exercises?
Yeah, of course. I think that we can ensure that ESG efforts internally and externally way. I start with the internally way. We have a lot of frameworks to ensure that information. In the market exists, for example, ISO's framework and others. The framework that we use a lot here in Latin America is the COSO ERM ESG. So this framework is composed for 5 components. The first component is about governance, the second, strategy, the third, performance, the fourth, monitoring, and finally, reporting. When I talk about governance, I mean that the board have to be compromised with the ESG goals towards establish a culture, organizational culture, or include in the organizational culture ESG matters. Also in the vision, also in the mission. About strategy, it's important to put or to include the ESG goals in the strategic objective. The third component, performance, talk about identify the risk, measure the risk, and response to those risks through controls, policies, procedures, etc. Finally, everything finished with a matrix. In the matrix, we can see everything, no? Controls, mainly controls. That is the most important to manage this ESG risk. And the fourth component is monitoring, because everything changed in the time. The ESG risk changed, the controls change, everything changed. For that, we have to continue monitoring and change all the matrix, all the controls. And finally, reporting using the different frameworks such as GRI standards, ESRS. It depends the region that you are located. I think that with this framework, you can ensure internally the ESG efforts, the ESG information, and avoid greenwashing. Now, about ensured externally, we can do on two ways. Only verification or assurance. When I mean verification, I talk about when, for example, you upload your report to GRI, the website of GRI, or in contract the same organization, GRI, and they validate or they verify if you accomplish with all requirements of those standards. Only that. They don't validate or they don't confirm that you put in your report is the truth. For example, if you report that your CO2 emissions reduce in 20% or in 50%, or maybe in this year you get a net zero, they don't validate that. They only verify that you accomplish with all requirements of GRI standards, only that. This is a service that a GRI organization provides you. But this is not so good to ensure externally the information. To ensure in good way, I think that you have to assurance your information. And there are a lot of entities that provide this kind of services. In the world, for example, firms like companies like SGS can assurance this information. These entities are related to assurance and certifications related with ISOs, for example. But with the interest of integrated information, integrated reporting that combine financial and non-financial information, other firms like, for example, athGADLANG in GCC region or Optimize in Latin America, starting to provide this kind of services. Because we have experience in assurance this kind of information. For example, we assurance financial information, applying the ISA, we assurance internal control, and others according to our standards from IAASB. In fact, in some jurisdictions, it's a proof that audit firms have to audit this kind of information, sustainable information. I mean, for example, in Spain, it's regulated that audit firms register on the Institute of Accounting and Auditing Accountants can provide this kind of services. In Peru, it's the same. Audit firm registrars in the College of Accountants and Auditors of Peru can assurance this kind of information. So what is our framework that we have to apply when we, as a audit firm, assurance that information? We have to apply the handbook of the IAASB. Specifically, we have to apply the ISAE 3000. It's the International Standard on Assurance Engagement. This is what we have to apply at this moment. In fact, there is a ISAE. This is the 3410 that we have to provide us information as an audit firm to audit statements of greenhouse gas emissions. So, and this is a standard that exists 20 years ago. So we already have a standard to information. So when we talk about ESG is more than only greenhouse gas emissions. We have to apply the ISA 3000. But in June 2023, the IAASB issued a proposal International Standard on Sustainability Assurance 5000, approved in this date for public consultation. The time for public consultation finished in December 2023. And I think that this standard is going to approve in this year or maybe at initial of 2025. This is a specific standard for assurance sustainability information, sustainability reports in accordance with GRI standards or SASB standards or ESRS or another framework to report. So I think, to close my answer, I think that it's important ensure internally the information to avoid greenwashing, of course, and to assure or ensure the information externally. Contracting an audit firm that can assure those information.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you very much. Let's move on to the next question. Ashley, would you help us telling what are the advantages can companies gain by investing in improved ESG reporting, even if not mandated yet?
Of course. Thank you very much for the question. Basically, like what I can say is that leading companies don't wait for mandates. They proactively invest in robust ESG reporting and reap a multitude of strategic advantages as early movers. And by getting ahead of the curve, we can say that these early movers can position their brand as an environmental leader and ethical exemplar. And due to my legal role, I can say that I'm constantly reviewing how rapidly regulations are evolving. I'm based in Italy, and I'm going to be talking about the Italian regulatory environment, but we see the same happening everywhere, including Middle East. I can confidently advise companies to start thinking about their ESG efforts before they fall under the scope of any kind of a mandating regulation or standards being like standard mandated by maybe and like Dubai Exchange, like Abu Dhabi Exchange for financial market participants. By doing that, companies not only mitigate future compliance risks, but also position themselves as a proactive leader in the field of sustainability. And this strategic foresight ensures that they're not caught off guard by new regulations or standards, mandating standards, and instead they are prepared to meet or exceed future legal requirements. If I give like just a couple of examples from Europe, the urgency is underscored. The urgency of ESG reporting is underscored by upcoming regulations such as the EU Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, CSRD, and the EU Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive, the CS3D. And we see that failing to comply or producing poor quality reports can damage a company's reputation, as stakeholders are increasingly scrutinizing ESG disclosures that are prepared according to these upcoming regulations. We can also say that it is quite difficult to comply with these new directives, regulations, because of the increased detail and accuracy required by these frameworks, regulations, because they can impose a substantial compliance burden, and companies without prior ESG initiatives and without prior process about how to manage these kind of standards can easily find themselves in a pickle and they need to dedicate a significant time and financial resources. They urgently need to increase the capability in their organizations to meet the new standards. And in today's values-driven market, being prepared before waiting for a mandate gives you a crucial edge in attracting investors, as we talked about earlier, partners, but also employees and customers inspired by your authentic commitment to sustainability by looking at your disclosures. Your ESG credentials become, in the end, a magnet for like-minded stakeholders. And improved ESG reporting also unlocks new business opportunities you would otherwise miss out on. And when I talked about a corporate sustainability due diligence directive, which focuses more on supply chains, which is quite difficult right now to have a full visibility over, because supply chains are really global right now, and it is really difficult to map your supply chain partners. But with the new regulations, we see that companies are demanded transparently disclosing information on their supply chain partners, on their supply chain activities. They're expected to report and identify all the risks happening in their supply chain, not only environmentally, but also human rights related risks are really pronounced when we talk about the supply chain. So supply chains are transforming with an ESG lens, and corporations prioritize partners with strong sustainability credentials, and not waiting for a mandate, but being prepared, like getting ready to understanding your own ESG performance and your the ESG performance of your supply chain, the red flags that may be visible in your supply chain is really important for your sustainability credentials. And of course, your ESG strengths open doors to innovative collaborations and markets. I would also like to finish by saying, while mandates can trigger compliance, getting ahead by investing in ESG reporting frameworks and standards appropriate for your company, of course, you gain a competitive edge today. It future-proofs your brand as a sustainability leader, primed to thrive in tomorrow's reputable business landscape.
Thank you, Ashley. Thank you very much. Let's move on to the last question. Sakif sir, if you would, what support mechanism can GCC governments introduce to further encourage voluntary ESG reporting? What's your thoughts on that? So you're on mute.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry, my apologies. Yeah, mindful of the time. I think we're just crossing 1 p.m. and I think we're supposed to finish it. So I'll just kind of wrap this question up by stating that in terms of what the current GCC governments are doing, I think it's the right mix. We've seen in other regulations, whether it's data privacy laws in particular, They have come up with voluntary reporting, and then gradually as things evolve, people get used to the regulations, then they bring in the mandatory regulations. But I think even before we go to voluntary local regulations, I've seen pressure coming from the international stakeholders, where even though if there are no voluntary mandatory reporting, I've seen in companies started reporting their ESG framework. What GCC countries are doing right now, I think it's the right approach, but I believe there are certain areas where they can maybe pick some ideas from the EU governments, where the governments have given tax credits, rebates, and other financial incentives to the companies that voluntarily report on their ESG performance. And again, I think as Asli mentioned earlier about the different recognized frameworks, you've got GRI, you've got SASB, where if they do report, they are given kind of incentives. They can also introduce awards and recognition programs, which incentivize companies to voluntarily report on their ESG efforts and showcase their achievements. And again, I've seen, especially when we've seen the annual reports, we've seen kind of maturity in terms of how companies are reporting their kind of ESG initiatives. And lastly, I think governments can introduce training programs, workshop, capacity building initiatives to help companies understand the benefits of ESG reporting. So it's got a lot of, we are at the moment of like educational, people now talk less about what ESG means. They are more talking about what benefits will we gather. And I think Asli is, covered that very diligently in terms of what benefits the company can, garner as a result of adopting the ESG agenda.
Let's move on to the Q&A questions from the public. So we're gonna take few questions, and then, so this first question is from Numair Kulkarni. Should companies include ESG risk in companies' principal risk? Sakida, would you enlighten us with that?
Can you just repeat the question again, please?
Should company include ESG risk in companies' principal risks?
Absolutely, absolutely. So if you recall, when I was talking about the what the board should do, one of the areas where I said point 6 was to do with the risk management and compliance. So I basically said the company should regularly assess their ESG related risks and incorporate them into the company's overall risk management framework, right? So when you're doing your risk assessment, ESG related risk should also be incorporated. And the second point I made at that time was compliance monitoring. So once you have identified those risks, then you need to make sure if there are any relevant ESG regulations. And when I talk about regulation, I'm not just talking about local regulations. I'm talking about your international regulations. If you have subsidiaries, if you have stakeholders in other jurisdiction, you may need to consider the ESG regulations of that particular jurisdiction. So ensuring compliance with the relevant ESG regulations and standards, and again, having a mechanism to identify any regulatory changes in relation to ESG, which again needs to be aware of. So the answer is yes.
Ed, would you be kind enough to reply to this? How do we create the right culture and mindset to engage our people and reinforce the right behaviors?
So I think this is again in terms of creating the culture of ESG responsibility. Again, it's a tone from the top. What you need to do is you need to kind of through internal communication, external communication, internally more to your own people, your staff. You need to demonstrate a strong commitment to ESG with board leading by example, right? So if you have the ESG strategy, which is built into your overall corporate strategy, and when you cascade down that to the manager level and again to the staff, they would understand that this is something which the board is taking seriously. And the second important point is the employee engagement. What you need to do is you need to promote a culture of sustainability and social responsibility throughout the organization, right? Encouraging employee involvement and initiative. And again, I've seen more in the recent past where employees are asked by the board or the senior executive in terms of how can they reduce their carbon footprint. So there are again, prizes being given to the employees where they are encouraged to come up with ideas, right? So especially from environmental perspective, social is more about the regulation and how you take care of your staff and your other stakeholders like customers. Governance, as I said, it's always been there, especially local. There are local regulations, but more on the environmental side. That's where companies who are taking it seriously, asking their employees, give us ideas in terms of how we can reduce our carbon footprint.
Thank you, sir. Ashley, how could companies navigate the ever-changing landscape of ESG?
Okay. Of course, like it seemed like a daunting task, but I believe there are some ways. First of all, we said that it's important to educate your people, and once they're educated, once they understand the ESG goals and objectives, they can keep track of regulatory changes and best practices. Like I personally recommend the companies that I'm working with, although like we as consultants are helping them to navigate this ever-changing ESG landscape, but I also recommend them to find some newsletters from their sector and from the region where they're operating in to see and keep abreast of evolving regulations and standards related to ESG in the regions they operate, in the sectors they operate in, to ensure compliance and adapt their strategies accordingly. Also, it's important to learn from the industry leaders and benchmark the company against the industry peers. This can be done easily by having some industry forums, some conferences, having some networks focused on ESG. It can be with the industry leaders, where you like some associations, as we talked about earlier, where you can really understand what is the topic, what is the trend, and what are the struggles, the pain points, and how your peers are facing and mitigating these challenges.
Thank you, Ashley. Thank you. Edmundo, could you tell us that driving the ESG agenda means sacrificing company returns? What's your thought on that?
Can you repeat, please, the question?
Sure. Does driving the ESG agenda means sacrificing company returns?
In fact, I think that you are not going to sacrifice in returns of the company when you implement or when you face ESG matters. Because I am going to give you an example. First, the disadvantage. In December in 2023, a Repsol company is a petroleum company that have operations also in Latin America, in a loading and unloading operation in the sea in front of Peru, throw petroleum in the sea. And it damaged a lot of our nature and the sea. And of course that they did a lot of activities to mitigate the damage. But at the next day, if you see the value of their shares, the shares decreased considerably. So increased considerably. So it shows that it's a really disadvantage that you don't manage the ESG risk. For that, I think that when you implement ESG risk, you are not going to sacrifice return. On the contrary, you are going to obtain more benefits for your entity. For example, confidence, build trust with the market, And in nowadays also the market want to buy services and goods to companies that have good ESG good practices. For that, I think that you cannot sacrifice, you are not going to sacrifice the returns. It's on the contrary.
Thank you. Thank you, Edmundo. So the remaining questions, we'll be answering those via email. And I'll just thank all the audience for participations and the panelists. Thank you for all your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
It was a pleasure. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.